There are different types of atoms, and the different types are distinguished from one another based on the number of protons that they contain. So atoms that have different numbers of protons are going to behave differently from one another, and they are considered different elements. So an element is an atom with a certain characteristic number of protons. Each element has a characteristic number of protons, and that characteristic number is known as the atomic number. And every element that has its own specific number of protons, which makes up the atomic number, is going to have its own elemental symbol, which is just a 1 or 2 letter abbreviation that gets used on the periodic table. So every element is an atom, and every atom has protons and electrons, an equal number of protons and electrons. These elements can also contain neutrons, and the number of neutrons in an atom can actually vary without changing the element. Remember that it's the protons that controls the nature of the element. So different versions of an element that have different number of neutrons are referred to as isotopes. The important thing to remember about isotopes is that they have the same number of protons and electrons, they only vary in number of neutrons, and in most cases they're actually indistinguishable from other isotopes of the same element. All different isotopes of an element behave effectively the same. So we'll consider the element carbon. Carbon has an elemental symbol of C, and it has an atomic number of 6. And because it has an atomic number of 6, that means it has 6 protons. And it also has to have 6 electrons so that the positive and negative charges of those subatomic particles balance out. Now within carbon, the number of neutrons is a little bit flexible. Most carbon atoms have 6 neutrons, but some of them have 7 and some of them have 8. That means we have 3 different versions, 3 different types of carbon atoms, or 3 different carbon isotopes. All of these atoms still have 6 protons, so they're all still definitely carbon, but they do vary in neutrons, so they're different isotopes. And every isotope is going to have a different mass because they have a different number of particles. And isotopes are generally distinguished from one another using the combined number of protons and neutrons, which is known as the mass number. So for our very first carbon isotope, we have 6 protons and 6 neutrons, so we have a mass number of 12. So we have 3 different isotopes, and the mass numbers are 12, 13, and 14. We can use our elemental symbols to differentiate between the isotopes if we add numerical superscripts and subscripts. So for our carbon example, we had mass numbers of 12, 13, and 14. The atomic number was always 6, so we can write 3 different isotopic symbols. And we would read these respectively from left to right as carbon 12, carbon 13, and carbon 14. And oftentimes, that atomic number 6 will be omitted altogether in casual usage, because if you already know the elemental symbol, you already know how many protons are in that atom.